Hello everyone, welcome to our Let's Play series of Disco Elysium. This is Colonel RPG as usual, and I'm very happy that you're supposed to join me today as we have a chat with everybody in here just to make sure we finish what is effectively the main quest of the game, which is getting to found the No Truce with the Furies. That's where we are.
You got us in, Cop. I can't believe you got us in.
He looks around the hall, examining the carpentry, with wonder in his sharp eyes.
Between you and me, I don't know if you've noticed this about me. I'm a little suspicious of authority. You really came through for the hardcore underground.
Sync the signs with Noid. I finished that quest.
Yes, you really came through for the hardcore underground. How come?
He spreads his arms, looking around at the speed freaks setting up shop. Andre is busy cutting some slightly less lame but still quite ungainly shapes on the church floor, sweating profusely. Estelle using her contact mic to listen to a tree underwater. The one with a large head is blasting the dance track on repeat, while the stained glass window behind him rattling from the bass. He's rattling from the bass. Or maybe with the stained glass, yeah. Sire, says our drama, the tent, it was a security risk, and in here, sanctuary. It was only noble of you. These kids got spunk. I admire that.
Okay.
That was for Kim. The lieutenant keeps it laconic. And I don't know what that means. But he keeps it. What he means is, you can't possibly have handed them this real estate for such a flimsy reason. Then again, whatever keeps your nose out of the bottle and on the job, says our esprit de corps. Noid, what do you think about the church? It's a miracle of carpentry. Dead bodies carved into total shapes. Now it can be something more. He rubs his hands together. Do you say that as a carpenter yourself? He shakes his head. I don't say much of anything as a carpenter anymore. They tried to make me into a reckoner and a leveler. Made me a bit manic, you know? I regret the time I dedicated to that profession and that worker collective. I say things more as a member of the hardcore side dance community these days. Okay. The material knowledge is mega, though. He looks around in the hollow hall of the church. Guild shit. Teaches independence. How old do you think this church is? Over 300 years? That's right. The first settlers built it, plus 6 more like it, and on the coast here, was one of the first things they did. Must have been really scared of something. But I understand, alone on an uninhabited archipelago, forced to face themselves in nature, pre-industrial quantities of solitude, the sea, perhaps something more fundamental. He means something paranatural. He must, says our inland empire. I would want to build a safe place for myself and my own as well. His voice echoes in the wooden cavern of the church. What style is this church built in? A cop who's into building critique. He taps a floorboard. Okay then, this is folk DeLoreanism. No, he's calling me lawmongerer. This is folk DeLoreanism. It's a subset of early DeLorean architecture. Okay, and what is DeLorean architecture like? Total. Everything between an ancient concrete cathedral and a glass cube in DeLoreanism. Or is DeLoreanism, anything between that. This is just a homespun version of it. Folksy stuff, early mass production. They made thousands like this. Does that help you out? What would a DeLorean building look like? Like that woman there, he points towards the stained glass window. Vertical, thin, white, a false image of grandeur. The source of the system is up there. You're at the bottom. They really dug that power vertical. Liked to show off large and intricate structures, arches, spires, put you down with them. They were really into painting everything white, too. Virginal shit, you know? Marriage shit. Virtue and tyranny. Hey, marriage is great! That is, yeah, that's one of those things that might unlock something. Because we don't know what our ex-something is. Could be an ex-wife or an ex-husband. This church isn't painted white, though, as far as I can tell. Stands to reason it used to be white on the outside. He He peeks out at a small window in the dark before the sea wind took all the paint off. Year after year, says our visual calculus, flake after flake, whitewashed clean, and then covered in green moss. What did you mean by dead bodies, by the way, about the statues? Dead bodies of perennial plants. Oh, right. Dead bodies of trees. In perennial... Do I know what perennial is? I actually don't know. He taps on the wood. Could that be the opposite of evergreen? I don't think it is. I don't remember what the word is for the opposite of evergreen, but it might be perennial. It sounds reasonable that it would be. Perennial trees are very interesting because they, like, when they, in winter, basically, when they lose all their leaves, and even before they lose all their leaves, they're effectively dead. Those trees, they effectively are dead. There's no biological, well, there's always chemical reactions and effectively biological mechanisms going on because the wood isn't left in stasis or anything. It's still things are going on, but it's not things that are natural of a plant. If you cut that tree out, if you cut a wood out of a perennial tree and compare its chemical processes to the wood of a tree that is in winter, of his perennial tree that is in winter, but still attached to the root, the processes are the same. The wood is basically dead, which is sort of phenomenal because all that wood is at the end of the day is just channels. It's just channels for what's the name of the thing? There's a name for a thing. I don't know the name of the thing. The thing that goes inside the wood. Oh my god, I don't know the word. I'm so sorry. I know in Portuguese, but that's my problem, isn't it? Anyway, the thing is, it's interesting because the dead bodies of perennial plants, they are also dead when it's winter. He says, Sigma functions have left this place. It's a good thing we came along. The spiritual collapse has been total. The spiritual collapse? I saw some piglets suckling their dead mother. Have you heard this one, Copman? He continues without waiting for an answer. After a short while, they shuddered and went away. They had sensed that she could no longer see them and she wasn't like them anymore. When what they loved in their mother wasn't her body, but whatever it was that made her body live. End of quote. He says, this is a high-quality carcass. He kicks the floorboard. The power of anotic beats and hard bass is needed to reanimate it. Where's that quote from? A Ceres man who lived a long time ago. An ancient hardcore brother. So, what you're saying is you're not a big fan of the inacentic system. Yeah, that was pretty straightforward. A 3,000-year-old tyrannical regime of history, built and maintained by hundreds of generations of self-appointed intellectuals? He looks around. It's foul score. The way he says it, the false in false score, is invested with 20 kilotons of disgust, says our rhetoric. But you said that the Ecclesiastes were all about love and hardcore before, remember? I only said unity. One word. Figures of authority always misquote you. He points to his friends. Andre doesn't care about the Ecclesiastes, he says. He just wants the operation to run smoothly. And Egg is a demi-beast. You shouldn't listen to what people say. You should listen to what they are. And you propose dance music will supplant this system? Anotic dance music, he nods. Regular dance music wasn't hard enough. And yes, I do. So how do you like the glasswork? I'm gonna point at the stained glass window. I don't. He looks over his shoulder. Fucker giving me the evil eye. Yeah, I'm getting some real negative vibrations from her too. No wonder. He cracks his neck. We need to get rid of it. Dismantle it. Can't dance with a giant mass murderer looking at you. Not a good look for the club. Mellow, man, says Andre. Mellow. He yells, rather. No one's a mass murderer. This is a house of love. Mass murder on the floor, says Egghead. And we have a lot of options here. We have 7 options, but she's the innocence of humanism. Humanism seems to be a pretty big deal around here. That's one option. But she's pretty is the second one. Yeah, but like, who isn't accused of being a mass murderer these days? Is the third one. What a curious quote. What a curious quote. So much of... Well, it's kind of complicated. So much of history of so many countries is founded on mass murder. And even though it isn't, you know, necessarily systematic mass murder... well, rather, it is systematic mass murder, but it isn't just like, you know, showing up and killing them all in one fell swoop. It can be over the years and mass murder of only a certain part of populations and stuff like that. That learning to... I say this as somebody who... I majored in archaeology, so my relationship with learning history is sort of one of multiple stages of understanding history as a whole. Because, you know, of course, what you learn... Well, at least what we learn here in Portugal in school is extremely whitewashed and just factually wrong a lot of the time, considering... well, it's kind of complicated because, you know, the public school programs for teaching are so steeped in what is traditionally taught and what our parents knew and what they were taught. So, you know, it's very complicated to, you know, like, imagine our parents, especially in my case, where my parents and the parents of my generation grew up in a fascist regime, which praised completely false notions of greatness for our race, specifically the word here, race, being used, and just, you know, completely whitewashed the history of mass murder of Portugal, and just praised that. So having a U-turn in school for it's kind of complicated. I sort of don't envy the role of somebody, an historian, specifically since we're talking about history. I don't envy the role of an historian coming up with, you know, basic or primary school history programs and what you teach the kids, because, you know, the kids would arrive home and be like, oh, our first kings were all a bunch of mass murderers and awful people. And then, of course, the parents would be like, what are they teaching you in school? What is this? And, you know, because people are completely deluded. And so my relationship with learning history isn't so much about coming to realize how much you are lied to, effectively, but rather in the sense that the meaning of the history, the meaning of the expression "history is written by the victors" isn't so much. I think that is just sort of a fulcral point of learning history, is understanding that particular sentence, because it isn't so much. It really is not that history is effectively written by the victors, because the losers also write their own history. It is. And it's at the same time, it isn't that that history. Yeah, at the same, like, you can look at it from two different perspectives, like at the face of it. Either you know, what we know today of past events, and specifically we're talking about in game. All of this applies to any fictitious or realistic setting, or real setting, I should say, because history is the great unifier. History is just common across humanity, and just even in our stories, it works all the same way. So history is written by the victors, can be understood as, you know, the victors murdered everybody of their opponents, and they just don't write the bad things. So, you know, that's it. And all we know of the past is just the good things of the people who won. That is not the case. Obviously, it isn't the case. We know a lot of bad things about the people who won. We know about the people who lost. We know about the people who died completely and were completely obliterated. There's history from that, and it's not. It's all about what modern day historians can make up of past history. But at the same time, if that isn't the case, then what is the meaning of that sentence, if we're assuming that that sentence is actually true? And in my opinion, it is, but I'll get to why it is. What is the meaning of the sentence? Is it just that the vast majority of people understand history as per what the victors want them to understand history? For a long time, I thought that was the case. I thought it was just another way of saying that what most people see of the past is what the people who, quote-unquote, won at the past want people to know, and it is true. That is true, but I think that sentence specifically, "History is written by the victors," has a much more pervasive effect in our historical knowledge, in our perspective towards history. And it isn't so much that I feel it isn't so much that we see old people, like, you know, great people great people in history that were completely flawed human beings and just absolute disgraces as human beings. Not just as also and many of them were mass murderers for sure. But it isn't just that we come to realizations that are a little bit uncomfortable. It's more that we live our lives according to the history that they founded. So we find out that, Churchill, for example. Churchill was the one that led the United Kingdom and not ultimately the Allied forces against Germany, but still had a very important role in the victory over Nazi Germany in World War II. But we start studying Churchill, and people that didn't live at the time, of course, people that lived at the time have their own first-hand opinion, obviously, but those people are very old now, so it's a different thing altogether. But people studying Churchill and realizing all that he was completely racist. He held many really, really fucked up beliefs. And he did many fucked up things as well. And the people who defended him did many fucked up things, people under him as well. So coming to that realization is also, it's uncomfortable if you hold a high opinion of winning against Nazi Germany, which you should. But it's uncomfortable because it's somebody who is very important historically, but it's also somebody who is a mass murderer. Actually, in the case of... probably in case of Churchill as well. I don't know the specifics, though, because I didn't study Churchill. I know Churchill is one of those nice examples of somebody who is very important and was a fucked up human being. But more importantly, it's just that we live in a world right now, whether you know Churchill or not, we live in a world right now that is built up on the actions of the people who came before us. And we live in a world that works off of that history that they wrote. So it's not that history, it's kind of, in a way, the history being written is not the history of the victors. It's the history that comes after. It's sort of a funny... I'm now thinking about it because I'm sort of trying to explain it and coming to these conclusions ad-libbing, really, the whole argument. So it's just sort of, in a way, the history that the victors write is the history that comes after. But that sounds very shallow when you say it like that. So, I don't know. I'm just sort of riffing off of the realization that every major person in history, not every, obviously, this is a hyperbole, but yeah, every major figure in history is a mass murderer. It's a thing that the people who learn history have to come to terms with, because it's true. It's sort of it's upsetting. It's because you learn these things, and especially if you are the kind of, which I'm not, but especially if you're the kind of person who is prone to having sort of idols or sort of having favorites, because a lot of people are, and I suppose there's nothing wrong with that. It's just sort of like looking up to certain historical figures and be like, I really like this person. They were very important, and I look up to them, and then realizing that things are not always the way they are taught in very simplistic terms. So all of that to say that this isn't. I don't think that is a particularly relevant thing to say and to point out, but it also has implications that would have hinted at my character's lack of, I suppose, appreciation for the finer details of what history and the role of history has in our society. Because if you sort of discard, this discards the findings, right? It's like, oh, who isn't anyway? I don't care. The Churchill was good, never did anything bad. I don't care what they have to say. You know what I mean? It discards further clarification of what people warlike in what people did and throughout history and all that. I do feel there is something terrifying about her. Yeah, that's probably what I'm gonna go with. Isn't she supposed to be an embodiment of the world spirit? Would you say she was, human? Interesting. Yeah, let's go with this one. I do feel there's something terrifying about her. There is, says Noid. She's a party repellent and must be taken down before we can begin partying in here. Take her down. Crash it. Destroy that window. Will do. The speed freak nods and puts the toolbox as if it were pets the toolbox as if it were a cat. No, Noid, says Andre. Stop twisting my melon, man. Don't twist his melon, man. People are gonna love it. It'll be our thing. His friend is it'll be our thing. Andre disagrees with him, obviously. Plus, it keeps the cold out. Does it? Because it's got a big hole in it. Would you say she was human? The young man stretches his ribcage, made of suspenders. I'm not sure that it is actually made of suspenders. I like that question, cop man. She did not live the life of a human. She lived like someone who is playing a game, the life of an operator. That's not the life that humans live. She was adored. Humans aren't. I don't know about you, but they hate me, and they don't think I'm innocent or some shit like that. I think the subtext here might be this one, indeed. I don't know what she represents in a metatextual level, though. My guess about her being the invisible hand of the market is a guess, I suppose. I'm not. We'll see. But let's go with this one. Let's try to prove it, even though you should try to disprove things. Let's try to prove it. She was a player. She played us all. It's just a game for her. Or to her. Yes, says Noid. He lets go of the suspenders, then they hit his chest with a slap. It's interesting that Kim doesn't say anything about this. Because he's I think he's of her persuasion. I'm not sure. Our rhetoric says, this speed freak does not quite understand the sudden escalation of emotion in that argument, but he agrees nonetheless. Huh. It's interesting that he doesn't. Humanism seems to be a pretty big deal around here, and she's the innocence of humanism. Humanism leads to eating sugar and pigs, says Noid. Humanism was invented to mass-produce billions of humans. Billions of humans can mass-produce hundreds of billions of pigs. And many, many more tons of sugar, says our logic. Am I wrong? Come on, amazing viewer. Am I wrong in saying that she is like the invisible hand of the market? She's definitely related to liberalism, because she would be the... She stands for liberalism here in the game, but still, the allusion to sugar and pigs, two of the biggest industries in our world, is quite on the nose. So it's pretty obvious what's going on there. I mean, it's not too on the nose. The game has a lot of other things that are very on the nose. This one is not really, but when you look at it through the lens that I'm trying to look at it, it sort of all fits together. Noid says, she liked games, her legacy, the thing we're living isn't real life. It's a strategy for some kind of victory against a long-dead opponent, but yo, I'm only Noid. What do I know? Now this might assume a different perspective. If we're talking about things in such... No, I mean, this is a deep conversation, all things considered. I wonder what he's gonna say when I say, but she's pretty. She invented the beauty you're feeling. Yeah, that was pretty obvious, actually. That was pretty obvious in the description that we read when we were talking to the glass pane. She invented the beauty that you're feeling. That's also another. That's also the market, because the whole the main critique of consumerism being that that people consume because they want to consume, but the reason why they want to consume is because the people who make the things that people consume want the people to consume. It all boils down to advertising, but well, it doesn't just boil down to advertising, but mostly it's advertising. He says, she and her glass cutters and iconographers. He turns to look up at her face. You set the standard, all right. Then you meet it. It's effectively like that, but it's Oh, it's effective like that, but it also very soft at core, soft off core. That so-called beauty of hers. You're right. I like it harder core. No, it says, in the true life of tomorrow, every woman will be an innocence. They will wear neon headbands and leggings, and they will glow in the dark. His eyes smile enigmatically. But you don't like that, says our Inland Empire, you liar. Our Inland Empire is actually seeing through him. You like this one. The softness of her is dear to you. Yeah, we live in a society. I don't know if that is indeed where the game. Yes, the game's hinted at that already. I don't think so. You know how specifically the way we are raised in a consumeristic society makes us be very susceptible to the ways of thinking, but not also the ways of thinking for sure, but you know, brought forth by the market, but more so just the like our whole entire society is based around our entire way of thinking is based around the notion of I want to say I don't know the word though. There's a word for it in English, but it's based around the notion that some people demand the demand for things, and the fact that things are demanded mean that they must be better. And there's of course a moral heart to that way of looking at the world, a moralistic. Well, I don't want to use the word that the game uses, but it's kind of complicated because the game uses moralism, and it's not it's not at random. But there's a certain moral claim to say that something that a lot of people want must have value in and of itself, and the market is very much an embodiment of that principle. So if you agree with that persuasion, or if you agree with that attitude, then the market must be right. But that's sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy at the same time, because it allows us, or it turns us as people into, we're educated that way, and it takes a lot of effort for us to not think like that, and we can never. He's obviously trying. He's trying not to think of her as pretty, but obviously he does. That's the way he grew up. When I said we live in a society, of course, that's sort of a trope that can be used to criticize, or to sort of not criticize, but sort of debunk certain criticisms of people who try to go counter to society, like people who try to, I don't know, say we shouldn't use petrol because it is killing our planet, and then but you have a car, so obviously your opinion is wrong. That's obviously a shallow approach to it. Also, it's the logical fallacy. But the whole, we live in a society, mate. That's the whole thing. Here in this case, it actually takes on a much more insidious and much more difficult to analyze aspect of our society, which is just that we're the fruit of it, and it's unavoidable. But I don't know if the game actually wants to go at it. It sounds like the game is mentioning that, but it is very deep. The lead is buried very deep, if it is that. But we're out of time for the day, so I'll have to go and check who is parked a truck outside of my window. I don't think you can hear the truck because my microphone is amazing. So hopefully you enjoyed the episode. I'll see you next time. Don't forget to leave a like if you want to see the next episode come out sooner rather than later. And thank you so much for watching. Bye bye.